Welcome, fearless followers, to the abyss of the unknown on our channel, Haunted Chronicles. I'm your host, the voice that will guide you through the shadows where reality warps and nightmares take root. Tonight we've lined up a trilogy of terror, a sequence of shudders, each story more bone-chilling than the last. We commence with Skeptic's End, the Greystone Manor haunting, where Damien Cross, a ghost hunter with a penchant for skepticism, is about to have his disbelief shattered. Greystone Manor awaits with its insidious secrets, and as the night progresses, Damien will uncover a truth far more terrifying than any spectre. But our journey into the night does not end there. Next, we'll venture into the echoes of Hollow House, where the line between the past and present is as thin as the veil that separates the living from the dead. A group of friends will confront the eerie echoes of a house that refuses to forget its tormented history. Will they escape its ghostly grip? Finally, brace yourself for Whispers from the Dark, an odyssey of fear where silence is more frightening than screams. An entity that doesn't speak but orchestrates horror with a mere flicker of the shadows awaits to toy with its prey. 4 individuals will face the ultimate test of their courage. Will they survive the mansion's malevolent game? Lock your doors, set your sights on the screen, and don't forget to like, subscribe, and ring the bell for notifications. Our spectral series waits for no one. Are you ready to confront the phantoms that lurk within these stories? Let's begin the haunt. Skeptic's End, the Greystone Manor haunting. The sinister Greystone Manor stood like a sentinel in the encroaching darkness, its oppressive presence a stark contrast to the eager chatter of Damien Cross and his crew as they approached its foreboding gates. "Let's get this sham over with," Damien scoffed, his voice echoing off the ancient stones. Mr. Wraithmore, the manor's elusive owner, emerged from the shadows, his eyes reflecting an unsettling knowledge. "You will find no charade within these walls, Mr. Cross," he intoned, his voice as cold as the grave. The crew, bolstered by a trove of high-tech gear, spread out, their voices a symphony of skepticism and scientific curiosity. "This place is as dead as my love life," joked Sarah, the sound technician, adjusting her headphones only to catch a whisper not her own. "Join us." Mark, the cameraman, rolled his eyes. "Probably just Damien trying to spook you." But Damien was elsewhere, confidently narrating to a camera. "People fear what they don't understand, and it's our job to shed light on the shadows." As the night deepened, so did the strangeness. A portrait seemed to weep, its sorrowful gaze following them. "Got a high EMF reading here," called out Alex, the equipment specialist, his voice tinged with excitement rather than fear. "Interference from the old wiring," Damien dismissed, but his heart skipped as the temperature dropped, breaths turning to mist. "Did you see that?" Sarah whispered, staring down a long, dark hallway where a shadow flickered. "Tricks of the light," Damien reassured her, though his eyes searched the darkness for an answer. In the nursery, the crew stumbled upon a crib, the sound of a lullaby hanging in the air. "There's nothing here," Damien stated, even as a chill ran up his spine. "Then why do I feel like we're not alone?" Sarah murmured, her bravado faltering as a toy block spelled out "stay." The crew regrouped, their laughter now forced. "This is prime-time gold," Mark enthused, though his hand trembled slightly on his camera. "Yeah, if we make it out," Alex half-joked, scanning the readings that made less sense by the minute. The climax of the night was upon them as they were drawn to the ritual room, the air thick with an ancient, hungry energy. "This is it," Damien announced, his voice hollow. "The heart of the hoax." "No hoax," whispered a voice that was not their own, and as they turned, Mr. Wraithmore was gone, the only evidence of his presence a lingering scent of brimstone. Panic set in as the crew was funneled toward the altar, an unseen force guiding them. "We need to leave now," Sarah screamed, her earlier skepticism shattered by the looming dread. "There's no way out," Mark stated, his voice breaking as the walls seemed to close in. Damien, finally facing the truth of the manor's power, felt the grip of unseen hands. "It's not supposed to be real," he gasped, his voice a plea to the uncaring darkness. And with that, Greystone Manor claimed another soul, its appetite for the unbelieving satisfied, for now. Damien's last desperate denial became the final echo in the night. a chilling reminder of the manor's insatiable hunger. Echoes of the Hollow, the haunting of Hawthorne House. In the veil of the night, cloaked under the umbral shade of towering oaks, there stood an ancient manor, its silhouette a grim reminder of days long past. It was known to the denizens of the sleepy town as the Hawthorne House, an abode that whispered the dread of its own legend. The locals avoided its vicinity, a tacit agreement held since time immemorial that whatever resided within was best left undisturbed. It was a dare, a test of courage that brought the unsuspecting James to the wrought iron gates of the Hawthorne estate. His friends, bolstered by the bravado that often accompanies youth, challenged him to spend an hour within the house's decayed walls. With a facade of confidence, James agreed, not willing to face the ridicule that would follow should he decline. The moon, a thin crescent in the sky, provided scant illumination as James approached the front door. It hung ajar, creaking softly as if beckoning him to enter. The air was thick with the scent of mildew and decay, a pungent aroma that seemed to cling to his clothes. With a deep breath, he stepped over the threshold and into the darkness of the manor. The door swung shut behind him with a thunderous bang, the echo of its closure a nail hammered into the coffin of his bravado. James's heart thrummed in his chest, each beat a frantic drum urging him to flee, but he steeled himself, remembering the mocking faces of his friends, and he pressed on. He wandered through the foyer, the beam of his flashlight a solitary guide in the oppressive blackness. The walls were adorned with portraits, faces of people long gone, their eyes seeming to follow him with silent accusation. The air was still, suffocatingly so, as if the house itself was holding its breath. James found his way to the parlour, where a grand piano sat, its ivory keys yellowed with age. Compelled by an inexplicable urge, he pressed a key, and a discordant note rang out, hanging in the air like a scream. The silence that followed was complete, and in that silence, he heard it. A whisper, a soft susurrus that seemed to emanate from the very walls. He spun around, shining his light into the corners, but there was nothing to be seen. The temperature dropped, a chill that seeped into his bones, and his breath became a visible mist in the frigid air. He watched in horror as his exhalations began to take shape, forming words in the cold. "Leave." The word hung before him, then dissipated. Panic rooted him to the spot, his mind a maelstrom of terror and confusion. It was then the house came alive with the cacophony of its haunted symphony. Doors banged shut, the chandelier above his head swayed violently, and the portraits on the walls seemed to warp, their painted visages twisted in expressions of torment. James ran, his footsteps thundering against the wooden floor, each stride a desperate escape from the nightmare the house had become. He found the staircase, the wood rotting and groaning under his weight, and he ascended. The second floor promised solace, a brief respite from the madness below. The corridor stretched before him, lined with doors that seemed to whisper secrets. He tried one, finding a bedroom shrouded in dust. The bed was made as if waiting for its owner to return, and on the nightstand a clock ticked away, the sound disproportionately loud in the silence. That's when he saw her, a figure draped in the remnants of a once fine gown, her back to him. "Help me," she whispered, her voice a melody of sorrow and longing. James's heart clenched with pity, and he reached out to her. But as his hand brushed her shoulder, she turned, and he saw the hollow where her face should be, an abyss that seemed to pull at his very soul. He screamed, a sound that was swallowed by the house, and he fled from the room. The hallway seemed to stretch and contort, a labyrinth designed to trap him within its walls. Behind him, the whispering grew louder, a chorus of voices begging, pleading, screaming. He found the stairs again, tumbling down them, the house around him alive with the echoes of its spectral inhabitants. He crashed through the front door, out into the night, and didn't stop running until the Hawthorne House was nothing but a shadow on the horizon. James never spoke of what occurred within the walls of the manor, but the torment of that night remained etched in his eyes. The Hawthorne House stood undisturbed, its secrets held close, a sentinel to the horrors that walked its halls, waiting for the next soul brave or foolish enough to cross its threshold. Whispers and Shadows, the Lockwood Estate haunting. The old Lockwood estate, shrouded in local legend and the darkness of unspoken fears, stood as an ominous silhouette against the charcoal sky. 4 daring souls, Alex, Jenna, Marcus and Tanya, passed its wrought iron gates, their hearts thrumming with a mix of dread and excitement. Alex, the bravest of the group, flashed his light across the crumbling facade. "Tonight we find out what's really haunting this place," he declared, his voice echoing off the stony silence. Jenna, the skeptic, snorted. "It's just an old house, Alex." The believer, Marcus, gripped his camera tightly, eyes wide with the thrill of potential discovery. "There's more to this place," he insisted. "The stories, they can't all be made up." Tanya, sensitive to the whispers of the otherworldly, clutched her chest. "Something's oppressive here," she murmured. "It's suffocating." As they entered the grand hall, the air grew colder, their breaths visible in the beam of their flashlights. The house seemed to breathe with them, the walls exhaling a foreboding chill that crept under their skin. Without warning, the grand chandelier above trembled violently, its crystals clinking together like the bones of a skeletal hand. Marcus swung his camera up, but before he could capture the moment, the chandelier crashed to the floor, narrowly missing the group. The sound of shattering glass echoed like a scream through the halls. Jenna's heart raced. Okay, that was probably just old wiring. They moved deeper into the estate, each step taking them further into the belly of the beast. In the library, the books began to rattle in their shelves, pages fluttering as if caught in a silent storm. Tanya reached out, a book flying into her hand, its pages opening to reveal unsettling images that shifted and twisted, scenes of the house's past perhaps, or visions of some otherworldly place. In the ballroom, a grand piano played a discordant tune, the keys moving of their own accord. The sound twisted in the air, a melody that seemed to gnaw at the sanity of the listeners. Alex moved to close the piano lid, but as he touched it, the music stopped abruptly, and the silence that followed was deafening. They ascended the grand staircase, each step creaking under the weight of a century of silence. As they reached the landing, the portraits on the walls, eyes of long-dead residents, seemed to follow them, and their expressions twisted into sneers and scowls. Marcus, undeterred by the growing sense of dread, urged the group forward. "There's got to be a logical explanation for all of this," he said, though his voice betrayed his uncertainty. Jenna was the first to notice the shadow at the end of the hall. Tall and menacing, it loomed, stretching across the walls as if cast by a figure standing just out of the light. But when they shone their flashlights toward it, nothing was there. Yet the shadow remained, an impossible darkness that chilled them to the core. In the master bedroom, the air grew heavy, oppressive. Tanya gasped as the room filled with the scent of old perfume and the sound of whispering gowns. The mirrors on the walls reflected not their own images, but a macabre ball. Spectres dancing in a ghostly waltz, their hollow eyes fixed on the living intruders. The friends clung to each other, their skepticism and bravado stripped away by the haunting manifestations. They turned to leave, but the house seemed to shift around them, the corridors becoming a labyrinth that twisted back on itself, leading them in circles. Panic set in as they realized they were not alone. Figures flitted in the periphery of their vision, faces twisted in silent screams, hands reaching for them from the darkness. The very air around them seemed to pulsate with malice, the entity of the house toying with them, a predator playing with its prey. Hours passed, or was it minutes, before they found themselves at the front door. They burst from the house, the first rays of dawn casting long shadows on the ground behind them. They didn't look back until they were safely beyond the gates. In the light of day, the Lockwood estate was silent once more, an impenetrable fortress of secrets and shadows. The 4 friends, forever changed, could only wonder if what they experienced was real or a nightmare born from the depths of the house's dark heart. But one thing was certain: the Lockwood estate played its game of terror well, and it would wait, patient and eternal, for the next players to willingly step into the darkness. Thanks for watching. To support us, please like and subscribe.